Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Kosnick, State Representative from Lakeville. This is the Transportation Committee. We're getting settled. I missed one new member over there. Welcome. Couple things. We've got mostly overviews. Go over the governor's budget proposals, and then House File 5 today. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to the Transportation Committee. We have a few new members and a few returning members and a few very brand new members. So the first order, let's just go start down the table here with staff and members, and then just introduce yourself briefly. And we'll start with DFL House Research.
Hello, I'm Kyle Schwab. I am the DFL House Researcher for Transportation this session.
Hello, everybody. Brad Tabke, State Representative for Shakopee, 54A.
Hi, I'm Lucy Ream. I represent Chanhassen, Chaska, and 48B.
Hi, I'm Julie Green. I represent Edina and Bloomington, District 50A.
I'm Larry Kraft, represent St. Louis Park, 46A.
Hi, Representative Katie Jones. I represent 61A in Minneapolis downtown and southwest.
Kayla Berg, I represent Burnsville, 55B, neighbor to our chair.
Erin Cagle, I represent 39A, which is Fridley, Hilltop, Columbia Heights, and Spring Lake Park, and DFL lead on transportation.
Andrew Lee, House Fiscal Staff. Joe Marble, GOP Committee Administrator.
Cindy Wallen, Committee Legislative Assistant.
Andrew Myers, representing 11 cities in western Hennepin.
Matt Burris with House.
Bjorn Olson, I represent Fairmont, Blue Earth, Mapleton area in southern Minnesota.
Marge Fogelman, I represent District 21B, Worthington, St. James, Windham, and Jackson are my bigger cities.
Hello, I'm Tom Murphy, District 9B, which is eastern Otter Tail and western Douglas County.
Justin Brill, GOP House Research.
Jim Joy, 4B, Clay County, Becker County.
Representative Roger Scraba, 3A, represent all of Cook County, Cooch County, most of Lake County, part of Itasca County, part of St. Louis County.
Patty Anderson, 33A. Let's see, Willerny, Matamidi, Delwood, Grant, Hugo, and most of Forest Lake. Thanks.
And Representative Sensamura is online. I'm not sure how to flip it over to her. Does anybody know? If she, Representative, if you.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can. Just go ahead and introduce. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, Representative Samantha Sensamura. I represent District 63A, which is part of South Minneapolis.
And congratulations on the new addition to your family.
Thank you.
So members, this is kind of, I was down in Kansas City over the weekend visiting my daughter in Lawrence, Kansas. So football's on my mind a little bit. We had kind of like the preseason when we were meeting here and working in our work group. So now we're in the regular season. It's not overtime. We got work to do. And I look forward to working across the committee with everybody. And that my expectation is also to keep it to transportation policy and the merits of the policy that's before us. And I will step in if it gets outside those lines. Representative Lead Cagle and I have talked, and that's a shared value. And so we look forward to getting the work done in the committee. I understand we have one file today, and as you can see, there's a number of amendments that are just being presented to the committee. So we may not actually hear House file during the 1 o'clock hour, and we'll come back at 4:30, depending on how many amendments and stuff. We'll decide that by the end of the meeting. Lead Cagle, do you have any opening comments that you want to share? Or you don't have to if you don't want to.
Just looking forward to working with everybody, and I'm excited that we could get some good transportation policy done over the next few months.
Great. The first on the agenda is, like we said, we'll do the governor's budget recommendations. Fiscal staff, Mr. Andy Lee, I believe has a spreadsheet in our packets that I haven't even opened, but Mr. Lee, if you could give us the highlights of the governor's budget for us to better understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. In your packets should be a one-page, double-sided spreadsheet that is titled 2025 Transportation Budget in Thousands. This is a summary of the governor's budget recommendations by change item. So it doesn't show the base spending, but it shows just what the governor is proposing to change. The first few lines of the spreadsheet, lines 1 through 21, show the proposed changes to the general fund in the Transportation Committee jurisdiction. So the first few lines you can see are related to operating adjustments for the Department of Transportation. And then you can see on line 7, a general fund change item for the Metropolitan Council that eliminates one of the 2 general fund appropriations for the Metropolitan Council for transit system operating, and that's on line 7. Then there's 2 operating adjustments for the Department of Public Safety, and remember, this is just the general fund piece on line 10 and 11. Lines 14 through 18 are general fund extensions of previous appropriations. On line 14, an appropriation from the 2021 session, and then appropriations from the 2023-2024 session, and I believe the last one on line 18 is an extension of a 2021 appropriation. Then moving on to the trunk highway change items, starting on line 23 of the spreadsheet. There's a number of operating adjustments for the Department of Transportation. I grouped these all together by the appropriation or rider in the Department of Transportation. So you can see on lines 26 through 34 are the operating adjustments. And then you can see additional change items starting on line 36 for the Department of Transportation. And I'll note on line 38 and 39, the state road construction appropriation increase and the Blotnick Bridge Spending Authority. Both of these appropriation increases also relate to anticipated federal funds. Then you can see another extension of trunk highway appropriation from previous authorization on line 42. Then moving on to the Department of Public Safety, you can see a number of operating adjustments similar to the general fund increases or the trunk highway increases for the Department of Transportation on lines 45 through 49. Then you can see state patrol initiatives on line 51 for hiring and a new state patrol headquarters for the metro area on line 52. And a federal match item on line 53 for the Department of Public Safety. Then you can see the revenues that I mentioned before, anticipated federal funds for state road construction and the Blotnick Bridge on the bottom of the spreadsheet. Then turning the page over, there's a few other funds that the governor has proposed changes for. On line 64, highways, your tax distribution funds, this is a slight increase to state patrol for the patrolling highways appropriation. Then aeronautics items, and I should note there is both spending increases and revenue change proposals for these 4 lines from line 67 to 72. Then under the Department of Driver and Vehicle Services, their special revenue fund account. These are the changes on line 75 through 80 for those, and revenue changes to that account on lines 83 through 87. And with that, that's the spreadsheet. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or you can wait for the agencies for specifics.
Mr. Marble will take member, if you have a question, he'll get on his list here and then we can ask. But yeah, I think it's probably best if we wait until the agencies present, might answer some of your questions, and then we can refer back and Mr. Lee would be available if the department doesn't have the answer. So, is that good? We will start on with the Met Council. Are there more amendments that are going to be continued to be handed out? All right, we'll do one more. Otherwise, I was going to say just wait until after you get them all together and not to disrupt the testifiers in the committee. Okay, so the Met Council, we have with us Chairman Zelli, no stranger to the transportation world or the committee. So welcome to the committee again, and love to hear your presentation, and go for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. I am Charlie Zelli, Chair of the Metropolitan Council, and I'm joined by Hannah Homeyer here. I also should note that I am joined in the audience, in addition to Judd Shutman, who many of you know, but Leslie Conderas, who's the General Manager of Metro Transit, Nick Thompson, who's the Deputy Manager of Capital Projects, and then Charles Carlson, who is the Executive Director of our Metropolitan Transportation Services that manages Metro Mobility. I'm really coming with 3 items and fairly simple presentation, really talking about one of those 3 items actually has budget impacts. The others are related to finance and are appropriate jurisdiction of this committee. One is the proposal to advance funds to MnDOT to coordinate a major highway project in conjunction with a transitway construction. The next is the proposal to make Metro Mobility riders have access at no charge to our fixed route transit system. And then the third is a reduction of $32.454 million annually from the state general fund appropriation to Metro Transit. I'll go through each one of those, and I'm open for questions as well as some of our experts in the audience. With that, going to the idea of advancing funds to MnDOT. This is just a confluence of circumstances that allow us to come to you with an idea that will make it much more efficient to deliver both a roadway reconstruction, a state highway, and building out a transitway. This is where you, many times, and I often get these comments, that both when I was Commissioner of Transportation and here at Met Council, do you agencies ever coordinate your activity? Because it seems like when you do one construction project, you wait a few years and then there's another one coming along. And right now, the MnDOT has project timing that is way behind where we could do a arterial bus rapid transit construction. And if we did it at the same time, it would make it less disruptive, but actually also save quite a bit of money. And so since we are actually accumulating cash for a few years in the near term, and then we have a use for that cash for capital maintenance. So we are really putting into reserves for a few years for dedicated expenses that we'll need later on. We thought, well, a good use of that cash would be to advance it to MnDOT and have it returned when we need the money. And so it's just an innovative idea. Met Council is not a bank. MnDOT is not borrowing, but this is a way to kind of stitch together some ideas that we think would have great benefit, not just to MnDOT and the local communities, but to be able to advance a transitway faster. The next item is free fares for Metro Mobility riders. We had this as a pilot project this last year, and we found it successful for 2 major reasons. One is this allows some of our Metro Mobility customers to become more mainstream when they can and when they like to, and be able to take fixed route transit, which in many cases can be a better experience and more efficient as our system becomes more and more accessible. The other is that actually saves Metro Mobility costs because there's a trip that isn't actually used. And we've done a little arithmetic recently, and we realize if we divert only 2% of Metro Mobility trips to a fixed route system, it'll actually save state resources for funding Metro Mobility. So it's an idea that we think provides both a benefit for our customers It is extra capacity we have in our fixed route system. And honestly, it is something that we have felt strongly enough that we currently, on a temporary basis, we're actually charging 1 penny a trip only to stay lawful, but it really are trying to provide a free service. The third item is the general fund reduction. This is a significant amount of money, $32 million a year. That has a legacy allocation as part of our system. When Metro Transit operations had a structural deficit, we were always coming to legislature asking for additional funds. Now we have multiple revenue streams, and with the addition of the Metro-wide sales tax, we know that we could give up this amount of funds and still meet our obligations, stay not just solvent, but provide all of our services and our vision of expansion. It would affect our ability to expand our systems in the out years. So I'm not saying that this isn't without some effect. This isn't spare funds, but we understand, and the governor's proposing this, given the strains on the general fund at this time, that this and the ability that Met Council in the near term can cover obligations and be solvent, that this would be the both prudent and an appropriate action this fiscal year for this agency to take a part of that obligation. So those are the three major items, and in the interest of brevity, I'm just I covered the kind of an overview, but I'm of course open and interested in any questions or comments you have.
Thank you, Chair Zelli. We do have a few questions. We will have the Met Council back at a later time to do more deeper overview of all the areas that you do, but today we're just kind of focusing on what you presented. Representative Kraft has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Chair Zelli, thanks for being here. Good to see you. Can you talk more about the impact of this reduction, this 32? You said kind of nebulously, we're okay, but it's going to affect things in the out years. You know, what things is it going to affect, and when? And why isn't it impacting right now? I also see that you're going to make a loan to do some road stuff, right? So, yeah.
Two items there. Chair Zelli, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Kraft, it is true that in the near term, by near term, I mean the next 4, 5, 6 years, we are accumulating some reserves, and that in those later years, we will be addressing some more significant capital maintenance. Capital maintenance is really keeping the transit system into a state of good repair. And if you travel, as I do, to other cities, you'll notice systems which have not kept up with their maintenance obligations. And we think and we believe now's the time to program, plan for, and make sure that whatever we're building now and have recently built will be kept up. There's other obligations coming to our system, foremost being that we're expanding the system. We're opening the Gold Line, and next month we're opening 2 more ABRTs this year. We have the Green Line extension opening in 2027. So there is operating costs associated with that expansion, and all that is part of a 25-year plan that we have. The part that losing $30 million a year, again, isn't affecting us, as I say, in this next kind of 7 to 10 year time period. But as we look toward additional microtransit, if we look toward additional ABRTs, if we're looking at additional transit ways that we'd like to build out, it is certainly we would have less resources to do those items. And so it is a longer-term concern, but in the near term, we feel that there's something we could manage.
Thank you. A couple other representatives that also have questions. Representative Tabke, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Kosnick. I have a follow-up on Representative Kraft's question. I have, as we get into the budgeting cycle and on all that work, I have major concerns about this proposed cut from the governor's office and from Met Council. And as you kind of described as to what would happen there, but can we talk a little bit about, as this moves forward and as we have the new funding that's coming in order to build out transportation system and also to handle the ongoing, the previous deficits that we had on the operating costs and those works that were there, what kinds of things will this damage? Like, I think this is what we, as this goes forward, $65 million in a biennium is a lot of funding that could build out a variety of bus rapid transit lines. It could do a lot to make our system work for more people across the entire metro and who need it, as well as throughout the entire state. And so what kinds of things will actually be cut in order to accommodate this? And then if we couple this with House File 5 that we're going to talk about later that has $100 million in cuts, like, this is a lot that would cripple our system. Like, how do you feel about that moving forward?
Chair Zelli.
Mr. Chair and Representative, there's no question that cuts would affect the system. I think that the most important priorities that we've been able now to manage with these existing resources is in addition to the operating deficit that was there, was additional safety and security, additional sharing of the costs of our light rail systems. Just remember, the counties used to cover up to half or all, in one case, the transitway operations. So we're actually able to cover all operations. And we think of these budgets and these streams of revenues as really covering primarily our operations, which are extensive as we expand the system. And I mentioned safety and security. The cost of operating has certainly gone up, as it has in order to attract drivers and train operators, maintenance workers. We have had to adjust to meet the market in order to attract employees. So there's no questions our cost structures have gone up. I think if reducing this allocation again is probably our capacity to take on additional lines, additional initiatives in the out year. I say out years in the past 7 or 8, 9 years, depending upon how we deem our success of expanding the system. We have a robust vision, and it's actually a plan to build out additional ABRTs, these transitways that are coming online in the next few years. And we know we have the capacity to take on those. But as we identify new areas, as we find micro transit as success, we certainly have just now started it in the Woodbury area and the Roseville, Falcon Heights area. It's been very successful. We want to expand that system. We would be constrained.
Thank you, Chair Zelli. We have a couple other representatives, so if we could keep the questions a little bit more concise. Next, we have Representative Jones.
Mr. Chair, real quick, are we not doing follow-ups?
Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Representative Tabke, please.
Thank you. And so, thank you, Chair Zelli. I understand where it's coming from and what needs to happen. So we just need to make sure that we're keeping our eye on the ball and with safety and making sure that that is a big piece of what we're doing and that these cuts won't impact safety and we fall down a hole that we've already been in. And then my follow-up question is, what kinds of issues are, as you look at the budget moving forward from federal cuts that may or may not be coming and not knowing what's going on, where does that take us and how does that impact your budget as that we are looking at it today?
Chair Zelli.
Mr. Chair, Representative, absolutely. Part of our operations are funded through federal formula funds. That would have an impact and would be negative on our current operations. Probably a bigger effect would be our capital allocations we get from the federal government in terms of bus procurement. And it's hard to say exactly what effect that would be, but that would also make a challenge. That would have more of a near-term challenge that came about.
Yep. Thank you, Representative Tapke. Good things to consider as we move forward. Representative Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Zelli. I'm so excited to be able to talk about transit because I am someone who relies on transit like thousands of folks throughout Minnesota. So I have three questions. First, just to start, you had mentioned what are the capital maintenance funds so that we're kind of growing? What are those planned to be spent on?
Mr. Chair, Representative Jones, the capital maintenance is kind of widespread. It's everything from rebuilding and refreshing platforms. You'll notice that the Blue Line, Lake Street, is going through a major refresh because that Blue Line is now 20 years old. And it takes a kind of a reconstruction, much like you would replace the roof on your house, but this is doing the kitchen as well. I mean, this is, but it might also be we talked about bus cycling, new buses. When it comes to trains are much more expensive. They last longer. But when it's time to replace train sets or reconstruction, rust proofing, track repair, track alignment, everything from waiting stations to the rolling stock itself. So it's widespread, and we're a very capital-intensive system. So, and without a funding source and a plan, if that gets delayed, deferred, you'll certainly see it if you go to Washington, D.C., when you have escalators that are closed or platforms that don't work. That's a lot of times lack of funding.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I have two more questions.
Representative Jones.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Zelli, I have two more questions. One is around, so you had mentioned that with the Metro Mobility, kind of this pilot, that you had said that just if 2% of Metro Mobility riders took advantage of this pilot, then it would basically net out towards a positive on our financial side. Has that impact actually been reached? I didn't get a clarification on that.
Chair Zelli, please.
Mr. Chair, Representative Jones, you're asking whether that is what we expect, or I'm not sure I heard you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Zelli, my question is, have we actually, within that pilot, did we reach 2% of the ridership in order to actually see that impact?
Chair Zelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Jones, that is a question I just asked this brilliant person here about an hour ago. And I think our pilot period, we're still accumulating some data, but this is Charles Carlson.
Mr. Carlson, can you enlighten the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charles Carlson, Executive Director, Metropolitan Transportation Services at the Met Council. During the pilot period, about 75,000 folks, certified Metro Mobility rides occurred on the fixed route system. By our estimation, at a mature system, if just 2% of those 75,000 rides were taken instead of Metro Mobility, it would present a savings to the state on the Metro Mobility program.
Representative Jones, another question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And finally, Chair Zelli, so I also have similar concerns as Representative Kraft and Representative Tapke. Is my understanding that, so, we're anticipating a $64 million essential cut for transit. And is my understanding that a BRT route typically costs between 40 and 60 million. So this effectively would prevent us from being able to construct one more additional BRT line. Wouldn't that be correct?
Chair Zelli.
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, Representative Jones, that figure about the cost which of a BRT, I mean, it really ranges and in some cases significantly more, but we think of those, this 30 million or 64 million biennium as the operating costs that would definitely reduce the amount of reserves we're building in this near period. but that is not capital cost where we've generally sought state, local support for building out our transit ways. And we certainly, the capital costs of these transits are very important. What's most important to us on our 25-year look is what operating funds that we can count on every year to operate the current system. Because a lot of the capital costs, except for capital maintenance, which I've described, is covered by other sources.
Representative Jones, follow up?
Yes, just follow up. Yeah, thank you for that. And so even if that 60 million would not be going towards a capital improvement, like with a new ABRT line, it seems like there are many other additional needs. You know, I ride the train, and the trip advisors are fantastic. I'm so excited that that program has been set up, but we need more of them. And so just these cuts, I could just see them having real effects on our system. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chair Zelli, I was just kind of curious about, of the new sales tax, how much of that is going to be used for capital build out of new lines?
Chair Zelli.
Mr. Chair, Representative Cagle, I think the diversified revenue we have, including MVEST and the sales tax, other sources, help fund our capacity to cover the operating costs of these lines. I believe we have certainly a capital plan, and of which comes from other sources of funds, federal, local, state. But when we think about the operating costs, that's where we really look at our ongoing sources of revenue. As an example, the gold line that's coming was built with both federal and local county funds. But we have assumed the full operating costs and capital maintenance of that line. So that's the kind of costs and forecasts we are looking to.
Lead Cagle.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Zelli. So there's no additional lines being added at this time, even though there was a boost in funding?
Chair Zelli.
Mr. Chair, Representative Cagle, absolutely. We have an ambitious plan to add ABRTs, several new transit ways, a transit way, the blue line under planning, and the purple and other lines. We're in conversations with local governments to ensure that we build those out. So we are absolutely considering expansion. What I suggest is if there is a cut in some of our operating funds long-term, it may reduce our capacity to manage the operating costs of those new lines. But this is much farther out. It's not, when I think about now in 2032, we have a significant number of new lines that we have planned and we do have the capacity to manage. But there are yet to be identified lines that could be impacted and yet to be identified, not in the plan, but it would be great to do, microtransit.
One last follow-up.
One more follow-up.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Zelli. So have any of these projects been accelerated then with the influx of new revenue? I think, when we passed the bill in 2023, we really wanted to see an accelerated build out of the transportation system because, as the old saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And right now, our transportation isn't very convenient. It's not very fast. And until we get more services and have the travel times down, I'd really like to challenge Met Council to get travel times down. For me to go from my house to downtown Minneapolis on a bus would take an hour and a half, and I can hop in my car and it takes me 20 minutes. So why would I hop on a bus? And so that's really, when we did the 2023 bill, we really wanted to imagine a system. We were envisioning a system that was robust, convenient, and would attract people to take more transit. And I really think that we need to accelerate our capital build out and really invest in the capital build out. And I know that the bonding request that came out from the governor's budget was 15 million. Am I correct for Met Council? And so I'm kind of curious too, how much we can get with $15 million in bonding. That's my last one, I promise.
Mr. Chair and Representative Cagle, let me just state up front that we deeply appreciate the 2023 funding package. It actually absolutely has accelerated our ability to deliver these projects. And in fact, that we're actually opening 3 transit lines this year is quite remarkable. And if you look at the years after that, there is not a city in this country that has as robust and funded set of projects. And I think that already it's making a difference. When you think about the intersection of these lines with each other, it is improving accessibility and transit times. One of the adjunct initiatives is a program we're called Transit Now, which is accelerating the frequency and really restoring some service. All of that relates to the not just funds, but of course our ability to attract a workforce, our ability to work with local partners, and quite honestly, is one of the best cases we're working with MnDOT to advance funds for their roadway reconstruction so we can deliver a transitway even faster. So we are certainly availing every resource, and thank you for providing those to help accelerate the overall program. Did I miss anything? I'm going to look at my expert. All right.
Representative Cagle, you're done. Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman Zelli, nice to see you again. Things haven't changed since the bus ride. We're still okay with buses, not so much with the rail, so it's all good. Couple of questions. One of them, the fund that you're trying to build, is that going to be, I'm trying to visualize it, is it a permanent fund and then you'll take the interest from it or something from it to use it and then eventually spend it all the way down? Or are you trying to build a fund permanently from this point forward? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you. It's good to see you. I really to clarify that this is a special situation where it is really a loan, not to make money on interest, but to simply provide capital to a sister agency. And when it would normally be part of MnDOT's program, the funds would come back because we actually have a need for it in our longer term program. But because we have reserves during this period of time, we can actually offer these funds and then bring them back. And I think the interest, if there is interest, it'd be more about more or less the same that it would be if we had the funds in an interest-bearing, savings account. The purpose isn't to be a bank; it is to actually accelerate projects and coordinate them so that they're done efficiently.
Thank you. Real quick, we got a couple, two more people, and then we have 2 more agencies to go through.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the funds that you're going to collect, they are from the 3/4 cent on the general fund tax, or sales tax. So these are general fund dollars going to transportation. Is that the?
Well, Mr. Chair, Representative, it would be from all of our revenue sources, which includes the Metro West sales tax, motor vehicle sales tax, our formula sources. It would be a period of time where we have some excess cash reserves that we will need later, but they come from our normal operation. And because of that, we have some flexibility. And we are asking for authorization for this, I would call it special situation.
Thank you, Chair Zelli. And the sales tax is dedicated towards transportation. I think the committee probably has concerns, and what they're voicing is using the transit dollars outside of transportation. Representative Ream.
Thank you, Chair Koznick. Good to see you, Chair Zelli. I have a question about the Metro Mobility free fares. I think it's a great idea, this pilot project you have here. I'm kind of curious about how much it's costing. But also, when we're thinking about building a really robust transportation system that's accessible to everyone, it's not just people with disabilities, but also people who have financial concerns who can't afford. So I'm curious if you've had discussions about expanding the free fares for people, maybe giving free fares to people who are in MA, making it more accessible that way, because the barriers aren't just physical or intellectual, they're also financial barriers that we have when we're trying to access the transportation system here. So curious if you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Chair Zelli, please.
Mr. Chair, Representative, actually, we do find this as a situation where we're actually providing access, as the system becomes more accessible, to Metro Mobility certified riders that actually can, at the same time, save the state funds. However, we have also, in a separate program, simplifying our fare structure and really getting to a point where it becomes more affordable, because we're actually ending up not just simplifying it, so it's not just something during rush hour, it's something if you're in odd pennies, if you don't have the correct change, it mucks up operations. Keep it to $2. And part of that is our transportation assistance program, which is only $1. And one of the things we've found is we're not promoting, marketing, allowing more access to those dollar ride programs at any time of day. And so we appreciate that one of the barriers is affordability. And we know that fare simplification and getting more people aware of the special fare opportunities would be maybe addressing some of that.
Representative Ream, good?
Thank you. Yeah, I know I've talked to people who are living on very fixed incomes, and they've told me, even $2 to ride Southwest Prime, which is our micro transit service, is too much, to go to the grocery store and pay $2.50. It's too much. So whatever we can do to either drastically reduce it or even eliminate it, I think would be a really good idea.
Thank you. We have Representative Olson, and we will have the other agencies present due to the nature of having I think 9 amendments presented. We're going to meet at 4:30 for House File 5 after session so that members can take a look at that. So I apologize to any of the audience here if you're here for House File 5, and that's the fluid nature of the legislature. So Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Zelli, for being here today. I was recently called a senior member on the Transportation Committee, which made me sound really old, and I don't know if I liked that. But I have to tell you, I really appreciate the conversation we've had here today, because the previous ones with the Met Council is this concept of build, extend, and there was never this concept of efficiency. And so when you're coming here today and you're telling us that 2% more individuals riding on regular transit is going to do some significant savings, that's what I like to hear. Like that is our tax dollars working in the right direction. So I appreciate the concept of the change the theme to not so much just build, but let's be efficient. Now, I do have a question here. When we're talking about the reduction of this $32 million, where I applaud you for saying, well, we can make it happen, and my colleagues on the other side are saying, well, this is going to be a significant reduction in our abilities. I have a question about this Metro sales tax, the 0.75% Metro sales tax, because if my memory serves me right, Met Council is receiving over 80% of that 0.75% sales tax, and it's going to be somewhere, the estimates are around $1.5 billion or more. I was wondering if Mr. Lee could put some clarification on that, because that sounds like a lot of money, which I applaud the 32 million reduction, but 1.5 billion, that's a lot of cash.
Mr. Lee, if you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Chair and Representative Olson, the 0.75% metropolitan area sales and use tax, of which 83% goes to the Metropolitan Council for Transit Operations and Capital. The estimate as of the 2023 session was that in fiscal year 2024, that would generate about $300 million. In fiscal year 2025, about $465 million for about $765 million over that biennium. And then in the 26-27 biennium, about $479 million in fiscal 2026, and $493 million in fiscal year 2027. So the total 2-year biennial total amount for the 4 years of the Metro sales tax so far for Metropolitan Council is about $1.739 billion.
Representative Olson, you're good?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
That is a lot of money. Chair Zelli, appreciate you and your staff being here. Representative Kraft, and then we'll let you just
Thank you,
close
Mr.
off
Chair.
real quick. But go ahead,
Just
Representative Kraft.
a clarification. The 1.7 billion, that's a 4-year total, not a biennium total, correct?
Mr.
And
Lee?
that biennium total, is that the amount going to Met Council, or is that the total 3/4? Just, can you clarify?
Mr. Lee?
Mr.
It's
Chair.
still a good amount of money, but I just want to,
Mr. Chair and Representative Kraft, the approximately 465 million a year growing to just under 500 million a year, that is just the Metropolitan Council share of the 0.75% metro sales tax. And so that doesn't include the 17% for metropolitan counties. Does that answer the question?
yeah, so it's
Thank you, Mr.
900
Lee.
or so per biennium, 950.
Thank you. Okay. Chair Zelli, any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr.
Brief
Chair,
ones,
and thank
please.
you, committee members, for allowing us to present the governor's recommendations. I think on the one point to consider, and we are incredibly grateful for this additional funds, so they were allowed to, A, plan ahead, and B, cover our current system costs. It is important to keep in mind that most of those new funds that were just described are covering existing expenses and costs that were previously covered by counties or part of the expansion of our system. So when we, or the structural deficit we currently had. So it is quite a bit of money, but it's money that was, in a sense, covering kind of existing obligations. So. But with that, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I also would offer and look forward to going into greater depth about all the programs we're doing at Met Council.
Yeah, we absolutely will do more of a Met Council Transit Day, just not today. So thank you, Chair Zelli and your staff. I know you're always available, and we will continue to dive into some of these budget recommendations. We will proceed next with MnDOT. And we have Commissioner Dobbenberger. We'll try to do a half hour, so members, if you could have your questions be kind of poignant, or just hold off and just kind of keep them to the budget proposal at this point, not general MnDOT questions, which I know is hard in the committee. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourselves for the record and proceed. And there is the handout, the slides are in your thing, and they'll point them up there. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nancy Dobbenberger, and I'm the Commissioner for MnDOT. And very pleased to have a little time on your agenda today. I'm joined by my colleagues, Eric Rudin, who's our Director of Government Affairs for MnDOT, and Sam Brown, who's MnDOT's Budget Director. And we were asked to keep the presentation to about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go through things rather quickly and briefly, but happy to take any questions or, of course, dig deeper into this later. So I will touch on MnDOT's vision and mission very briefly, MnDOT's goals, and then go into our governor's budget recommendations. So MnDOT's vision is a multimodal transportation system that maximizes the health of people, the environment, and our economy. And our mission is to plan, build, operate, and maintain a safe, accessible, and efficient and reliable multimodal transportation system that connects people to destinations and market throughout the state, regionally, and around the world. MnDOT's goals are to promote a safety culture, advance transportation equity, champion sustainability actions, maximize stewardship of resources, and foster a thriving workforce. And this slide just recognizes the impact of the 2023 legislation. As you know, roughly $600 million is surplus in the coming biennium for the general fund, but the state faces about a $5 billion deficit in the 28-29 biennium, which is a serious challenge, but our governor's budget recommendations addresses this head on. But while the general fund is facing challenges, the health of the trunk highway fund is in good condition at this time. So we have 8 different items for which we're recommending to be funded, 6 of them through the trunk highway funds, 1 that's mostly trunk highway and a small amount of general funds for operating adjustments, and 1 with the state airport fund. And these are listed here in priority order. I'm going to go into these in just a bit more detail. Next slide. And then we also have items that I'll just barely touch on briefly during, at the end, but these are language changes that we're recommending, and they have a fiscal impact. Extension recommendations of previous appropriations and policy recommendations that are related to financial items. So the first of our operating budget items here, operating pressures, we are recommending $22.2 million in trunk highway funds in fiscal '26, and then $32.8 million each year thereafter, and $146,000 of general funds in fiscal '26, and $296,000 each year thereafter. And general funds help to fund offices of freight rail and passenger rail. And these are really to address rising cost pressures and mitigate impacts to current service levels. So staff compensation costs and IT service increases. Next item, state road construction. So this is to increase the state road construction appropriation in the trunk highway fund. And since our STIP, our 4-year program, was revised late summer, we need authority to spend the additional federal funds coming to us, and for which we're seeking state fund authority to spend as additional match. For federal funds, these dollars include dollars that we've already been awarded, but will begin spending in '26. So there's a larger amount shown here in '26. And fiscal years '27 through '29 reflect just formula federal funding at this time. These are assumed increases in federal formula dollars in those years. The next one is the Blatnick Bridge Spending Authority. So we are proposing to have a separate budget authority to track and manage this very large bridge project funding. And this is primarily the MnDOT share of the $1 billion infra grant that we received with the Wisconsin DOT for the Blatnick Bridge. Aeronautics revenue restructuring. This proposes to set an airline flight property tax at $8.05 million, so it's currently up from $7 million, and increase aircraft registration rates by 15%. And since this fund hasn't been adjusted in over a decade, over the last year, we've worked to propose restructuring to bring additional revenues into the state airport fund, and worked with stakeholders to get their input on the proposal. And they were certainly understanding of the need, but what we really heard is we need to have a balanced approach to this, so that's why we're looking at property taxes as well as aircraft registration. Projects funded with this airport fund fund airports around the state, including runways. Metropolitan Planning Organization transportation planning grants. So this would be for $34,000 in trunk highway funds for MPO grant increases. This funding would help to work toward the planning along with MnDOT to help us better align land use planning with planning for transportation systems. And they haven't received an increase for these planning grants since they were established in 2003. Corridor planning. This is to continue the corridor planning we've started. So this would be a $3 million base trunk highway fund increase to support statewide corridor planning. So about a year ago, we established a policy advisory committee and a technical advisory committee, and we're integrating state priorities with the selection and development of future state highway projects in alignment with local plans. This would help us to continue that corridor planning. We've been doing this work, but that was supported by federal dollars that are running out, so this would continue that work. Recruitment and retention. So this is $765,000 base trunk highway funds to make MnDOT a workplace of choice. And it would fund organizational health and wellness. So MnDOT's Org Health program has seen overwhelming success with increasing requests for support and services, and offering this program is a key benefit for attracting and retaining employees in a competitive labor market, while also supporting mental health, psychological safety, and critical incident management. And this is especially important for our positions where we have challenges hiring, like snowplow drivers. It's critical to have these resources available for employees who are on construction sites next to live traffic, helping state patrol with traffic control for crashes on the interstate, things that they're seeing that they can't unsee that can cause critical stress. And the current demand in the program is exceeding the capacity and preventing proper implementation of key strategies and actions. This also is for human resource staffing and labor relations staffing. So it would help to add 2 supervisor positions to enhance HR's ability to manage timelines, oversee performance, and monitoring requests more efficiently. And it would add a labor relations tech position to provide support for labor relations consultants to analyze and implement changes to policy, law, and collective bargaining more quickly. And then workforce planning implementation. We have a strategic workforce management plan that we just launched last fall. It's a 5 to 10-year initiative designed to help our department anticipate and manage the workforce needs, requiring additional resources to ensure successful implementation. So the continued implementation will require additional capacity to monitor and manage progress while adjusting and shifting to labor market concerns. Facilities modernization. This is $3.2 million in base trunk highway funding for MnDOT truck stations, requiring additional funding to maintain them at a desirable level. This would go toward replacing outdated doors, windows, HVAC systems, roofs, et cetera. We have 129 truck stations around the state. And then language change recommendations. I won't go through these. I just want to highlight the top one there. Met Council loan, Chair Zelli talked quite a bit about in his testimony, and that reflects MnDOT's proposal, or the governor's proposal in the MnDOT portion of his budget recommendation. And then extension recommendations. These are all existing appropriations where we have some unspent funds that we're looking to extend. And then these are our policy recommendations that are related to fiscal items. So drone fees, our Office of Sustainability and Public Health Grant-Making Authority, active transportation solicitation frequency, and short line rail revisions to the transfer component of the infrastructure modernization credit. So that completes the recommendations for the MnDOT portion. And again, thank you for allowing me to present that, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the presentation and being with us. We get just a couple quick questions. Representative Jones, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I have a question about the grants for metropolitan planning organizations, and so your alignment together on that. I'm just kind of curious if you can offer an example of kind of what is the output work when those two are working together.
Mr. Chair and Representative Jones, thank you for that question. I think what you were asking about is what exactly that would go for, the $34,000 annually. Is that, did I understand that correctly?
Yes, like what is the outcome? Can you give an example of how land use and your transportation kind of bodies work together?
I want to try to keep the questions to the change items in their budget proposal, but go ahead and please answer the question, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair and Representative Jones, the grants would go toward planning. So outcomes of that planning would help to align where our MPOs are doing, say, for instance, land use planning and planning their own transportation system, how the state highway would align with those plans, the plans for the state highway, the future of the state highway, the needs. Those are then better coordinated with the use of trunk highway dollars toward those planning efforts.
Oh, Representative Anderson.
Very quickly, line 38, state road construction appropriation increase, is that the Met Council loan? What is that?
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Anderson. That is our state road construction appropriation request to be able to spend trunk highway dollars on state road construction. So that's not specific to the Met Council loan, if that was your question.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. So this is a budget request over and above the normal, 70 to 110 million that you have in your budget? I guess I'm trying to find out exactly what this is.
We can follow up on line 2 if you.
Thank you, yeah.
Unless, Commissioner, if you have an answer now, or if you, otherwise, if you need clarification, that's fine too.
I can take a shot at it. Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson, so this would be after updating our STIP, our 4-year program, additional federal funds came into it, and the additional need for state funds to match those. So this is the appropriation that would allow us to spend those additional dollars that we have.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you.
Representative Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. My question is in the line of the aeronautics revenue restructuring. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing these increase in these rates, and to me, it seems as though the governor and the department was looking around for something that they could increase, and they said, well, we haven't touched this for a decade. Let's touch that. Can you provide some justification as why we are increasing these tax rates? Is it just we were looking at a list of long overdue increases that we haven't touched for a long time and we can get extra revenue, or is there actually a purpose for this?
And I would add to that, if you could share with the committee what the revenues are used for. Commissioner Daubenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Olson. This money that is needed for these additional revenues would be used for airport needs. So it's the needs that we've had building up within the state airports and not enough funding within the state airports fund to meet those, that we looked at a way to restructure to bring in more revenues to meet those needs. So when it comes to what specifically we have for needs, I know there's some needs with the airports themselves, the runways. We have a little more detail on that. Yeah, thank you.
If we could, are there specific airports that you could share with the committee of specific projects?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes.
And excuse me, and then also let us know who's paying this proposed tax increase?
Okay. So when it comes to the airports, including Rochester, Bemidji, Duluth, Brainerd Lakes, Thief River Falls, Falls International, and the St. Cloud Airport are facing funding constraints due to regulatory burdens, inflation, and other increased costs. So those are some of the airports that have the needs. And then your second question was in regards to who would pay. So the aircraft registration taxes or fees, those would be paid for by the airlines.
Yeah, I can jump in.
Mr. Rudin, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Eric Rudin with MnDOT Government Affairs. So there's two components. There's the air flight property tax, which are paid by commercial airlines. So Delta pays the bulk of that, although Sun Country and anybody who has commercial service in Minnesota would pay a share. And then the aircraft registration would be for if you're a private citizen, you have to register your aircraft as you would register an automobile to use the road. So that piece would be paid by aircraft owners, but not by commercial airlines because they pay the air flight property tax. And as the commissioner mentioned in her remarks, we have worked with stakeholders, and while nobody is ever thrilled with a tax increase, they both felt that if, there was some adjustment upwards, as long as sort of both contributors were paying an equal share, that might be something that they could live with.
Follow-up, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for that answer. I'm looking at this spreadsheet, and it's looking like it's going to bring about a $1.2 million worth of revenue if we increase these taxes. You listed off a pretty hefty list of airports that are running into budgetary constraints. And I guess this is just, me being the senior member on the side, looking at it saying, where were these 2 years ago when we had $18.5 billion? Where were these 4 years ago? Who was talking about, I'm imagining they had constraints as well. And a $1.2 million increase on aircraft taxes and registrations just seems to me as though it's let's look across the board at anything we can possibly increase and not decrease at all. So I'm not pleased with it, and I think that there's some work we can do anytime we have an increase in taxes.
Thank you. We will move on. We could probably spend a lot of time on that. We've got Representative Cagle, Representative Green, and Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have questions on slide 7. Especially with the extensions of some of the appropriations. I'm just curious why the money hasn't been spent yet.
Commissioner? And we are going to do the Department of Public Safety, so that is the list for this department, unless there's, and I hope it's to the budget. We will have them back and can ask more questions down the road, but please, if you need the question repeated, hopefully not, if you could help us out, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Cagle. I could quickly go through this list. Sam Brown just brought a slide up that shows the list of extensions. So the Upper Sioux property conveyance, that's where we had the slope failure on the Yellow Medicine River, and we had an appropriation. That project's going to be let this fall, so it goes beyond fiscal 25. So we need an extension there. The Amtrak second daily train, that's the Borealis line. So we were able to work with the host railroad, KPCK, to start that service earlier, but we still have improvements to make to the line. So asking for an extension for those two. The Amtrak federal aid matching funds is the operating funds for that rail line. And then Reconnect Rondo, they've actually spent most of that money, but there is some remaining that they still plan to spend, but they need a little more time to spend it. The MPO greenhouse gas modeling, that there's some work that's been done there, but I understand there are 3 interested metropolitan planning organizations who want to still yet develop models, and so we need an extension on those funds as well. And the Highways for Habitat, there is funding there, but we still need to be able to spend some funding for additional planting seasons for that work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Quick follow-up?
Quick follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the extension for the Amtrak, the TCMC, that was appropriated in 2021. Like, I'm just kind of curious why, not so much what the projects are, but why isn't the money getting out the door? Why isn't the work being done? I think, when we appropriate money, we expect it to go into the ground, I guess, especially from this committee. And so seeing that, something we appropriated back in 2021 hasn't been spent at all, I think is something very concerning.
Okay, if you want to get back to the committee afterwards, that might be more appropriate that's a good question, unless you have a quick answer, because we have 2 more committee members and we do want to finish the other overview as well. We'll move on to Representative Green.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. I just have a question. In your goals, you talked about a thriving workforce, and I'm just curious, looking at the budget as a whole, how much impact do we have when we have cuts on a budget that impact the workforce and our ability to continue providing jobs for Minnesotans? Like, how much is that circular? I'm just curious what your opinion is about that.
Commissioner Daubenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Green, for that question. Yes, whenever there are cuts to our budget, we need to look across at what needs to be cut. Could be workforce, could be support services for workforce, but certainly that can have an impact on employee morale, the view of the state of Minnesota being a workplace of choice. So there are certainly impacts to that.
Okay, thank you. And would you
Thank you,
also?
Commissioner. No problem. We do go through the chair, though. Do you have a quick follow-up?
I have one follow-up, Chair Kosnick.
I'll let you have one quick follow-up because you're new. But like I said, we have the other thing to go to, and I hope it's not, it should be more direct to the budget that we're discussing today, but go ahead, please.
Great, thanks, Chair Kosnick. I appreciate the grace. No, Commissioner, I guess, would that also include jobs and workforce for building roads and maintenance and bridges and all, like, the Minnesota as a whole? So I guess that was the only thing I wanted to add in. So not just beyond the Department of Transportation. Okay, thank you.
A little more, there wasn't a question then, right? Okay.
I guess it was just a comment.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll note that it's good you were new. If you were a more senior member, you wouldn't have gotten such grace, I guess.
I'd gavel him down.
Just, are you going to, will you be here for the 4:30 part of the hearing? Okay, then I can hold, I just wanted to make sure that I can hold my questions till then.
Excellent. Did we have, all right, we're caught up. Closing comment, we appreciate your time. Sorry you got to come back a little bit later, but that's the way it works. But feel free to make a closing comment, but we do look forward to working with the department, obviously, to get a budget passed this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for allowing us time. We look forward to further discussions on any or all of these items, and maybe one last follow-up to Representative Green. Yes, not only to the workforce in general, but impacts to the state of Minnesota with cuts across the agency, certainly with how we keep up our service on the roadways, how we can keep up with the quality condition of our pavements and bridges and other roadway infrastructure, and then how we can support the other modes moving forward. All of those would have impacts with cuts to the agency. Thank you for that question. And thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate Mr. Radin and your staff. And we will apologize in advance. The Department of Public Safety, Commissioner Cassandra O'Hearn and her staff. But we got, what do we got? We've got about a half hour, so not too crunched, but do try to save a little bit of time for committee questions if we can, but look forward to your presentation. Please
Thank
proceed.
you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Kosnick and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cassandra O'Hearn. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. Thank you for having the department here today to discuss Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan's budget for our transportation divisions. In the interest of time, I'll provide a high-level overview of the proposed budget, but we do have division directors available if there's any specific questions. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but we look forward to coming back. Since there are some new members, I do want to very briefly remind everybody that the Department of Public Safety is in two separate committees, and some of our divisions fall within the jurisdiction of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, and some fall here within the Transportation Committee. Transportation divisions include the State Patrol, Driver Vehicle Services, the Office of Pipeline Safety, the Office of State Safety Oversight, and our department's administrative and related services. The first item for the governor's proposal is an operating adjustment, and that is a little over $4 million in FY '26, $6 million in FY '27. It's across the various different funding sources that fund the Department of Public Safety. We have over 2,200, I think we're close to 2,300 now statewide. Our employees are committed to delivering quality services to all Minnesotans. As with all businesses and governmental agencies, we're seeing an increase in the costs associated with maintaining current levels of service, including salaries, healthcare costs, rents, those kinds of things. This year, the governor is recommending measured agency operating budgets, given the budgetary outlook. And this operating adjustment covers the State Patrol, Driver Vehicle Services, the Office of Traffic Safety, and our support services. The department and the governor are requesting grant administration authority. This is a budget neutral provision, but is absolutely necessary for the department to continue to provide oversight of our significant grant dollars. DPS divisions oversee and administer several grant programs where state dollars are distributed through partners throughout the state as designated by the legislature. Critical part of administering grants is having the resources for the agency to complete the crucial oversight functions to eliminate fraud, waste, and misuse of public funds. And that starts at the beginning of the pre-award, looking at eligible applicants, ensuring that the expenses are allowable and according to grant terms, assessing risk, and making sure that all grant dollars are handled pursuant to state and federal law. Proposal would protect grant fund investments by allowing the department to use up to 5% of grant funds for non-competitive grants and 10% of grant funds for the competitive grants to ensure stable and adequate funding for the cost to implement the necessary controls. For the State Patrol, and for those new to the committee, we do have present the Colonel, the Chief of the Minnesota State Patrol, Christina Bogojevich, in the audience. Last year, the legislature appropriated significant, last biennium, the budget session, sorry, it wasn't last year, for the State Patrol Metro headquarters to do the purchase of the property and the pre-design for that. This request is the over $48 million out of Trunk Highway to actually build the building. This headquarters will bring 6 separate currently Metropolitan sites that are in leased space into one modernized space. It also will meet the CALIA accreditation standards that are required for securing and storing evidence based on national best practices. Having 2 operational districts, it's the East Metro and the West Metro, along with the training unit, investigative services, commercial vehicles, and the headquarters all under one roof, will allow synergy and collaboration for leadership of the State Patrol and for a modern policing agency. The State Patrol is also needing additional funds for the recruitment and hiring initiatives. As you're aware, or may be aware, the State Patrol typically offers 1 academy every year. That means that the advertising and the recruitment happens once, right, to get in for that one-time situation. The State Patrol has 91 trooper vacancies today and a current academy that's ongoing of 42. We know that in the next 4 years, there will be about 100 troopers that are eligible for retirement. That will cut the workforce by nearly 25%, and that's just the known vacancies, not any that choose to leave for other reasons. The $1 million in fiscal '26 and in '27 will include positions specific to recruitment and allow for ongoing marketing and paid advertising to target areas not only within Minnesota, but nationwide. It is difficult to find police officers and those willing to go into the sworn protective services. And so we're competing in Minnesota in a very small pool. We really need to work on a national level to do that. The recruitment effort would then create the opportunity to have a larger 2 academies in fiscal '28 and '29. That would allow for that more rolling, so we're not losing good applicants that are ready for hire, but don't want to wait for that year academy to happen. A policy provision that doesn't have a fiscal impact, but I want to touch on it very briefly, is modifying the penalty for excessive speed. Currently, the speed statute requires a 6-month license revocation for anyone traveling over 100 miles per hour. This proposal would require that same 6-month license revocation for speeds that are 35 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, regardless of what that limit is. If you're driving 65 in a 35, is my math going right there? I'm trying to talk fast. Anyway, it's a really dangerous situation in order to do that. So in order to reduce traffic fatalities, dealing with the excessive speeds on Minnesota roads. And this is a provision that the State Patrol, as well as the governor, believe will help. Our Office of Traffic Safety is seeking they're seeking $485,000 in both years of the biennium from the trunk highway to support the Office of Traffic Safety Planning and Administration match requirement. This is to allow us to maximize the use of federal dollars. These federal dollars require a 50% match. So that will better leverage our federal funds to support the activities, including public participation and engagement. There is a provision there, also a policy provision to increase safety for all riders, and that's to require all Class 2 ATV users to wear a seatbelt if the ATV is equipped with a seatbelt and if they are being driven or ridden on or within the right-of-way. Driver and vehicle services, the no-fee transaction payment to service providers. This allows, and this is an approximation of 2.1 million. That is based on estimates because the actual dollar amount that would be paid to these service providers would depend on the fees that they collect. This proposal allows driver vehicle services to pay the full service providers, deputy registrars, and driver's license agents a fee for transactions that currently do not have a fee associated with it. This ensures that our deputy registrars, full service providers, and our driver's license agents are paid for the work that they do. Driver and Vehicle Services is also requesting rulemaking authority for the Ignition Interlock Device Program, along with the funds necessary to support that rulemaking activity. DVS needs explicit rulemaking authority to write and adopt the extensive rules for the Ignition Interlock Device Program related to program guidelines and certification standards. The rules are necessary to comply with legislation that was made in 2021. Online driver's license renewal. This brings in an estimated revenue of about 2.74 mil. Proposal allows drivers to meet the requirements, and that means like no change to their name or no change to various things. The option to renew their driver's license online. It meets growing customer demand for online services. I believe that's once every, it aligns with the current process if individuals renew online using the Snowbird situation. Commercial learners permit length extension. This proposal increases the commercial learners permit from 6 months to 1 year. This aligns Minnesota law with federal requirements, and it eases the administrative burdens for applicants as well as DVS staff. Replace license plates at the time of vehicle transfer. This is an issue if you have sold a car to someone and they don't transfer the title. That license plate is associated with the seller, right? So if when I buy a car, if that title doesn't get transferred by the new buyer, tow trucks, tolls, parking tickets, those kinds of things will end up coming to me, the seller, as opposed to the new buyer. This is a proposal that is coming forward after listening to Minnesotans who have had this issue occur. It also results in additional revenue for deputy registrars, as transactions must be done in person at a deputy office. It's intended to ensure that license plates on a vehicle is tied to the current owner of the vehicle by requiring that timely transfer of title. It also assists our law enforcement partners when they get information back from a license plate that they are dealing with the actual owner of the vehicle. Dealer plate changes. This proposal would place a reasonable limit on the number of demonstration plates that are available to automobile dealers in Minnesota. There are currently no restrictions in place on the number of plates that can be held by a dealer, and this has resulted in more plates in the rotation than needed, and real-world example of them being used inappropriately both in the state of Minnesota as well as across the country in other states. Getting close to wrapping up. The background check expansion for auto dealers. This proposal requires a full national criminal background check via the FBI for all dealer applicants. Currently, a state only background check is necessary under law. It also would eliminate a 10-year limitation on specific violations. Those are the violations that currently would make a dealer ineligible to become a dealer. Currently, that exemption or that ineligibility is only good for 10 years. So it would make those permanent. This concludes, hopefully, a really fast overview of the DPS budget proposals for our transportation divisions. We stand for questions and look forward to meeting with you and appearing before this committee for more in-depth conversation as well.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Appreciate the presentation and the speed in which you did it. You know, I hope that you are also meeting with members individually, if you can do that. We do have time for a little bit. Just one housekeeping thing. The rules are in your packets here, so they will be adopted. We will recess until approximately 4:30 back in this room. And then one other thing just to note in the rules, Lead Cagle and I discussed a little bit. I would prefer that members of the audience do not approach the committee table for a couple reasons. One, there's usually a committee in the room after us, so we need to clean up and get things moving. But it also gives our committee members times to ask each other questions if they have that. And then third thing is it's a security thing. We're going to be much more cognizant of security in our committee rooms, and so we'd appreciate it. You know, you can talk to members once they leave the table. Representative Olson and then Representative Tapke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Deputy Commissioner for being here. I always get a little bit cautious of this concept whenever anyone brings up the idea of building something with trunk highway fund dollars that isn't a highway. So when we're talking about building trails, when we're talking about offsetting carbon, using trunk highway funds, that burns me a little bit. And I'm seeing here that there's about $48.5 million that we're talking about taking out of the trunk highway fund in order to build the state troopers headquarters, which probably a great thing, building a new headquarters that combines all sorts of different districts, and we can have it, make it that way. Efficiency is a great thing, but I always get really distracted by the concept of taking it from roads. So my question is, how does the governor justify this? How does the commissioner justify taking it from what is designated to be used for roads?
Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Olson, for the question. So explain the need for the headquarters. The State Patrol exists, and its mission in statute is specific to patrolling highways. So the work that it does off highways, for example, Capitol Security, is not going to be housed in this building, the new headquarters, specifically because of the trunk highway aspect of it. State Patrol is funded by trunk highway because its purpose is exclusive to patrolling highways.
Follow-up, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a state trooper's wage, is that paid for out of the trunk highway fund, or is there other transportation dollars that are allocated to pay those wages and administrative costs?
It is,
Deputy Commissioner, please.
caught myself there.
Okay.
Thank you, right? We're getting back into the habit. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Olson. Wages for troopers patrolling the highway are paid out of the trunk highway fund.
I would note, I appreciate the line of questionings, Representative Olson. I did watch the committee hearing in this other body. I think the concerns were strongly expressed, and despite our members being very polite today, we have that same very strong concerns. The trunk highway fund, in my opinion, and many of our members, is for building out our road system and transportation system. There's been many other instances of trunk highway robbery, and I would consider this part of trunk highway robbery. And I hope that we can work to find other resources, as was discussed quite heavily in the committees when you were planning this building. And Representative Olson, just a note, not to make you more anxious, but it's $48 million in the next 2 years. And in addition, there was about $20 million just for the planning and design work leading up to it. So the trunk highway fund has been robbed enough, and I hope that we can find other revenues. The governor and your department can get more creative on that. Representative Tapke, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I've got two items. One is just to start off by saying thank you for a lot of the safety work that's being done in here. I think this year I want to work a bunch on road safety pieces and not just enforcement and consequences, and just making sure that we are doing the right things in Minnesota for design-wise, enforcement, consequences of accountability, and those kinds of things. And so I just appreciate the things that are in here. I think there's a lot more work that can be done, and so I just wanted to, if anybody in here has that want as well, so we'd love to work with anybody across the aisle and on our side for those pieces as we move forward. And then the second thing is that I was surprised that the governor's budget didn't have anything. That we had pretty broad bipartisan support for mobile driver's licenses last year, as it kind of came up at the end and we weren't able to get it across the finish line, with the expectation that we could come back this year. And I was surprised that that wasn't included in the budget. Is there a reason for that, or is there or where's that headed?
Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Tapke, for the question. First, if I could, back to the chair, we look forward to meeting with all of you and having conversations with respect to the funding and the criticality of that headquarters space. So
thank you.
Look forward to that. Representative Tapke, to your question about mobile ID, when the department was looking at what the top priorities were, that one just didn't rise to the very top, but we look forward to meeting and having further conversations around ways that we can meet Minnesotans' needs who are demanding that we have more online options and availability for different things. So look forward to that.
You're good, Representative Tapke? Representative Kraft and then Representative Jones. And we, just kind of looking at the agenda, that we let members talk a little bit more during the Met Council part, just because there was more questions, but knowing that we were going to push back the House File 5 to this afternoon. So, but we have about, about 10 minutes. So Representative Kraft, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Deputy Commissioner. I have just a few quick questions. Just one comment. I would love to talk to you more about ignition interlock. I've been working with folks I've been looking at that quite a bit in respect to our drunk driving laws. And on the Grant Administration Authority, you said something about 5% of non-competitive grants, 10% of competitive grants. Is that funding you're looking for, or is that, can you, again, I didn't quite understand what that is. And then I have one other question after that.
Excellent question, Representative Kraft. I picked up on that as well, so very interested in your answer and reasoning. Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Kraft. So the 5% of what it would allow is when the department is appropriated funds for grants, it would be available or allowed to use up to 5% of that amount for non-competitive or up to 10% for a competitive grant to be able to use that for the administration, the staff that it takes to do the technical work and the behind the scenes and the ensuring that all of the, funds are being used appropriately, that type of thing. So it's not an increase. It is revenue neutral because it's actually authority to utilize a percentage of funds that either have already been appropriated or would be appropriated in the future for grants.
Representative Kraft, quick follow-up, and then we have Representative Jones.
Yep.
You're using her time. But you're the senior member on that side, so go for it.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Okay, so because in many times when we put grants forward, there is indicated in the legislation what percent of administration fees may be. So you're just saying in cases where there's not, that you'd want that? And then because you asked me, I'm going to ask one other follow-up question that so you have it all in there. And that is, on the excessive speed side of things, have you looked at if someone speeds excessively, requiring them to have a speed governor on the car? At some point that may be, especially if people repeat offense on excessive speeding.
Deputy Commissioner O'Haron, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Kraft, with respect to the grant, if it's already laid out and is specific, what we have found is in the past, there are some percentages that are currently provided in statute, but it did not go towards already existing legacy grants or cover future grants. So it would not be a piling on. It would be to cover those grants where that authority does not exist. As to the speed governor issue, I think we'll need to follow up afterwards about other opportunities to reduce speed on the roadways.
Very good. Representative Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner. I'm also interested in kind of these opportunities to provide more accountability around safety, and very encouraged by this proposal to increase that around speeding. And I'm just curious, where does the 35 mile per hour kind of threshold come from? Is it based in data? Are we, trying to just throw something out to try something? Curious. There.
Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Jones, for that question. And I don't have the specifics. The issues really are around what is a level that everybody would agree is absolutely excessive in order. As I had mentioned, current law says that there's the 6-month revocation if you drive 100 miles an hour. That what we have seen through the citations is excessive speeds at all speeds, not just the 100 miles an hour, but rather, right? And so 35 miles an hour is that kind of threshold.
Thank you. That is the end of any member questions. I would be interested at a later point, if you could share with the committee and the colonel, Representative Tapke had a bill that I supported, your trooper retirement. I don't know what the technical term was, but if we've seen an impact on that as we look at some of the numbers that you presented to us, it might be a little too early, but I think that was a good solution. So you had mentioned the number of troopers that are looking to retire. And so hopefully the solution that the troopers helped us come up with and Representative Tapke introduced is going to be helpful to that ends. Members, again, we will be in recess until approximately 4:30 at this back room here. You can check your emails, but I'm sure that'll hold pretty true. With that, we are in recess.